All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Reactionary Opinions. All the gentlemen are here. Sir Russell the Based, how are you doing there, my fine gentleman?
I'm good, all good. Happy to another Tuesday evening to record some shows, and looking forward to a nice discussion.
Yes, and Mr. Patriarch, how are you doing there, good sir?
I was just drinking a beer and being very patriarchal as usual, so I'm doing just fine.
That's good. And I take it that you chanted some anathema to the liberals out there and all of that this evening.
Yes. Quite.
Send out some anathema to the world. Anyway, so guys, this evening's show, we're going to be talking about pretty much one of the hottest topics at the moment, the current chaos around the world, the Black Lives Matter movement, and what is behind the real reason for these protests, and what all the fuss is about, and what I'm sure that a lot of people that listen to this show would understand that a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about is recognizable and all of that. But if you're new to the show and you've just recently sort of swallowed the red pill and you don't quite understand how the world works around you, hopefully we can help you clear up some ideas about it. So the whole idea behind the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff is, and what we're going to be talking about tonight is something called critical race theory. Okay, it's a Marxist idea. It stems from, obviously, directly from Marxism, and another thing that you might not have heard of much called Gramscian Marxism. I don't know if I'm saying that correct. Gramscian Marxism, which is after an Italian Marxist by the name of Antonio Gramsci, is one of the most important Marxist thinkers of the 20th century. Basically, what he did was he wanted to take Marxism and capture culture as well. And we'll get into a little bit into more of that and how that works out practically in the world around you, and hopefully try to point out some things that are clearly noticeable to you. But Dylan, I want you, obviously being an American where all of this nonsense always comes from, you guys are the most creative with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Us bloody South Africans then go and copy it, and then the British, and then the rest of the world catch on, and it's just But anyway, Dylan, you might want to give us a inside idea of what this all is about.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the rundown. So basically, in the United States, there was a Black American by the name of George Floyd, who was caught on camera apparently being killed by police officers. And then in the advent of this, as one might expect, there's a media furor, and everybody started rioting. The press and politicians seemed very keen on egging this on. And of course, it turns out after the fact that that's not exactly what happened. Apparently, the suspect, or George Floyd, the person who died, for that was high on fentanyl and possibly alcohol, tried to turn in a counterfeit $20 bill in order to buy things, and then had the police called upon him. At which point the officers arrived, and apparently could barely walk, and then I guess there was some kind of scuffle, and then he died of a heart attack while in custody. By the looks of it, it seems that the officer certainly has some fault in this, but to play this off as, those racist police just out to kill black people again, does not seem to be at all true. So what you're seeing now is mass protests, mass riots. Lots of cities in the United States are suffering tremendous amounts of property damage. Some people have been killed already because of the irresponsible way this situation's been held. And it's, entirely predictable in this day and age, unfortunately. You saw it happen with Trayvon Martin or Michael Brown in fairly recent memory. And I think it's very much a racial issue, at least in the way that the public consciousness around it is sculpted. It's not a law enforcement issue. It's always castigated as a racial issue. So it is what it is, and it's very unfortunate and disgusting to see how the media and politicians are using this to virtue signal and, agitate for all kinds of, I don't even know what. And that's sort of, I guess, where we'll tie this into the cultural Marxist angle. But there's a lot of anger, but not a lot of calls for solutions, typically speaking. So I guess that's what I have to say for now.
So something also that I want to add to that as well is that Dylan did mention Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. We all remember Michael Brown, the hands up, don't shoot guy. They are, it was proven that wasn't the case. Michael Brown actually, went and robbed a convenience store and ended up dying, because a cop shot him, because he was, wanted to attack the cop, and that ended up coming out.
Yeah.
And the cop was trying.
I was just saying, according to black witnesses on the scene, he charged the police officer in apparently an effort to get his gun from him. So, not exactly hands up, don't shoot.
Yeah. And then the policeman was actually, tried by a jury and found, not guilty because, witnesses and all these sort of things. The most alarming evidence that you can have in a court case is pretty much an eyewitness, and there was lots of eyewitnesses that saw this happening and all of that. So, but anyway, and it's something interesting that I want to just mention is that this almost particularly happens on an election year. So Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, 2015, 2016 was more or less when that happened, and the riots and stuff always happen in an election year, especially when you've got a Trump sort of candidate running against a someone like what's his name, creepy Joe Biden. Creepy Joe Biden is basically, he's basically Bernie Sanders. He's just too shit scared to say that he's a massive socialist, But all his ideas, all his policies, all his stuff it's Bernie Sanders. It's just Bernie Sanders was at least an honest, filthy socialist, But Joe Biden's
You're a socialist, just tell us.
Yeah, exactly. Just tell us. But we're going to get to the socialist aspects in a little bit later as well. But something important to note as well, viewers, is this always happens at an election year. That's also very important. So that's also something that should be sending alarm bells off in your head as to why this has now become a political issue now instead of just a white cops out to kill black people things. Russell.
Yeah, look, I think Dylan has pretty much covered the whole the event and the whole sort of underbelly of everything. But the whole situation, the way it flared up like it did, that doesn't happen by accident. These situations are always used for the revolution, right? And there's no doubt that, particularly America, there's been a strong desire from within the intelligentsia, the academic circles. If you look at the way they've been teaching in the universities the last 20, 30, 40 years, there is a desire for a revolution, all right? It's the only Marxist revolution, constant demands for it. So what they are trying to do is they are trying to create a situation to almost get people to give up, to scare people into giving up rights, liberties, free speech, silencing people, isolating people. It's a way of taking people's freedoms away from them, not so much in the physical, but in the mental state. You know what I mean? They make the situation such a hot issue, all right, that and they control the narrative completely with their agents in the media, that it's a way to basically silence the whole narrative. I mean, the only narrative that you heard for the first week or the first, say, maybe 4 or 5 days after this incident was white cop, black victim, police brutality, white racism, black victimhood, white privilege. These are it was just like a mantra getting pushed out the whole time. And I mean, the thing is, this is not just coincidental. You know, I mean, the thing is, if you are an honest person, an honest journalist, you will actually look to see what actually happened and actually try at least figure it out. But if you listen, I mean, I couldn't stomach watching it. I haven't watched it. I've just watched various clips here and there. But if you watch these talking heads on these news stations and the stuff that they say, it is absolutely revolutionary, and these guys are complicit in trying to bring around a revolution. Just like what Andrew Breitbart said, you know, politics is downstream from culture. They are determined to revolutionize the culture so that they can actually change the whole structure of a country, and not just America, but they're pushing to do it in all over the place. I mean, we saw these protests breaking out in Melbourne, Australia. For goodness sakes, it's got nothing to do with what's going on in Australia. This is the point to which these guys are actually able, the media and that sort of thing is actually able to push this sort of thing. The worldwide, it's almost as if, you know, maybe it's just because it sells well. I don't know. Maybe it's for malevolent purposes, but I don't know. It's just completely blown out of proportion, and the good people are sidelined. You know, eventually you'll start hearing in the next couple of weeks all the good stories coming out, all the truthful stories coming out. But by then it'll be too late. You know, the damage is done and the narrative has been formed, and that's what we'll remember, and that's what will be in people's minds. So it's an incredibly dangerous thing, and I don't really. The best way to do things is to, if you are where you can amongst your friends and family, talk about it in your safe areas and encourage one another. That exactly that is that on the ground, that people do not agree with this, that people are not revolutionized. Speak to your friends, speak to your families off the record. You know what I mean? That's the only way I can see improvement done. And then also do. You know, what we're doing as well is bringing that sort of message across as well, just to assist people and say you're not alone.
Yeah, so something that Russell, that I just want to bring up there, and we kind of alluded to it earlier on in the show, is this Gramscian Marxism, which is essentially the power and it's a sociological view, and it's specifically linguistic, okay, where these guys are so good at not only controlling. Okay, so let's understand this. The narrative is all about speech. Okay, the left is incredibly good at extreme and creative speech. Okay, something that the right is not really very good at comprehending. You know what I mean? That they're more good at sort of guarding against that. You know, because for the most part, traditionally. You know, people more sort of on the right side politically have more kind of wanted to just be left alone, you know, and just leave me alone to do my own thing kind of thing. So what they used to is just sort of guarding against that harsh language. And that's what the left have used in this entire thing. Is like Russell said, he kept hearing this mantra of you know, white privilege, white racism, black oppression, the blacks are the oppressed, blah, blah. But we all know this is not the truth, okay? Black people right now in the US and pretty much all around the world are probably, I wouldn't say the least, but they are probably at this point the least oppressed they've ever been in the history of mankind, okay? In the US, the black people are some of the most privileged people in the United States. I mean, for example, out of the 10 richest sports stars,
institutionally speaking, I would agree with that.
Yeah, out of the 10 richest sports stars in this world, 6 of them are black. I mean, is that oppression? That, you've got guys like Michael Jordan, you've got rappers like Puff Daddy and Jay-Z and all these guys who are worth, hundreds of millions of dollars. Is that what oppression looks like? I don't know. I don't know this. And also, if you want to look at statistics, let's go to some statistics. I just want to bring this up over here. This is the number of total percentage distribution and percentage of female and percentage of female of undergraduate fall enrollment in degree granting institutions by race, ethnicity, and this is on National Center for Education Statistics in the US. Okay, so in 1976, the total percentage of white people to go to university was 82%. It's in 2008. It's probably lower now today. It's 63%. Black population in 1976 was 10%. 2008, it's 13.9%. So there is definitely an improvement overall in black people's lives in the United States over the last 50 years or whatever it is, 100 years, even more. You know what I mean? But we're supposed to just say, okay, well, they're just oppressed, which is just not true. But obviously, this is the way the Marxists work linguistically. And Dylan, you want to add something there?
Yeah, sure. So I think what we're seeing right now is 2 things, and you've alluded to both of them. So first, you mentioned an election year. So I think one of the phenomena we're seeing happen now, particularly in media and among the political elite, is we're seeing them basically cynically utilizing this situation to make political hay out of it in order to better garner support for the Democratic Party come November for the election. And the other thing that we're seeing with the activist portion of it, not necessarily, the normies who are going down or joining the picket line or whatever, but the real hardcore activists, is they're using this in a sort of cultural Marxist way, like you were talking about. And basically, the whole idea with Gramsci and his, I guess, fundamental contribution to political theory is that the cultural hegemony of capitalism, if you want to call it that, has basically brainwashed the working class. So in order to thus, the revolution's never going to happen on its own. So in order to make the revolution happen, we need to seize the levers of cultural power, universities, pop culture, celebrity, in order to get them to think the right way first, and then the revolution follows. So both with the media sort of plays a role in this too, because they've been infiltrated by some of these characters. And what we're seeing now play out on the activist angle is when they say, first off, and this goes, I actually made a video on this with which you could find if you YouTube search Mr. Patriarch. But what they mean by racism is not what you and I mean by racism. What you and I mean, and what virtually everybody who's not an academic or a sociologist means, is racism means racial bigotry, right? It means hating somebody because of the way they were born. and discriminating against them because of that. What the cultural Marxists or sociologists or basically woke leftists mean by racism is not that. What they mean is any system, any conceivable system of social organization whereby which one group benefits and another one doesn't benefit as much. So if you have any system with any disparity between people groups, that is essentially racism, as they would say it. So, for example, if you you could say, with a straight face, private schools are racist because they perpetuate the privilege of the majority white students who go there, and they exclude blacks. But a sane person will be like, well, if there's entry scores to get in there, and they're not discriminating against people based on race, but based on attendance or based on achievement, then that's not racist. But they don't see it that way. So basically, that being the case where essentially any structure which has unequal outcomes is racist, then that social structure needs to be attacked and dismantled from the top down and arranged in such a way that you do have equitable outcomes, which is essentially, and the only way you can do that is essentially to move in socialism through the back door.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to add just something quickly to what Dylan said. It's not necessarily, when it comes to the culture revolution or the cultural Marxist or critical theory, Gramscian Marxism, whatever you want to call it, it's not just about race. It can be about race. It's about everything that makes up a person. So it is your religion, your gender, your sexual orientation, all these sorts of things. Anything that they, like what Dylan says, anything that they can find where there's two groups with disparity between them, all right, whatever it may be. For instance, the idea of only heterosexuals being allowed marriage rights, for instance, that's an inequality. So there, you get what I'm saying. That's a power structure that needs to be smashed. You get what I'm saying. So if heterosexuality is the enemy, the solution is to promote LGBTQ. All right. If Christianity is oppressive, the solution is to promote Islam. If males, and especially white males, are the solution, are the oppressors or the problem, the solution is transgenderism or feminism. You see, it's all about those things.
Yeah, so what you end up in that situation with is you end up with something like Black Lives Matter actually becoming the new white supremacy in essence, because what happens then is the Black Lives Matter movements and the white people of the movements will go and gloat about, my white privilege. I'm so privileged. I'm this most amazing person. Look how privileged I am. I'm just stinking of privilege. Please let me, the superhuman privileged white person, lay down a little bit of my privilege for you, poor black person, you insignificant thing. I mean, think about it logically, how racist that is and condescending that must be to an honest black person that actually thinks about this realistically. Think about it. It's the same as black economic empowerment. It's the same thing. They are racist because what it does is it assumes that black people cannot achieve these things without the helping hand of the privileged white person,
The great
so
white state.
racist.
Okay, guys, it's called
but from their own point.
Sorry, just to interject quickly, just one sentence here. The soft bigotry of low expectations.
Precisely.
Yes.
Dylan,
but I was just going to say, though, from their angle, it is not racist, because what you're doing is you are fixing, in quotes, the imbalance between the races, right? So that's how they see it. They don't see it as patronizing. They're like, no, we're correcting oppression. We're fixing the inequalities that exist between these two people groups. And so it's not racist. What we're doing is we're leveling things out, you see.
Yeah,
So we take
yeah.
haves, give to the have-nots. And it's just, it never ends with these people, and nothing's ever good enough.
Well, this is the thing.
And you see this a lot. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Dylan, I interrupted you. Carry on.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, and I'll speak as the foreigner here, so you guys don't have to think about it. But in the South African context, you'll see a lot of people talk about, oh, there's terrible inequality, and they'll frame it that way. They'll say, whites were advantaged in the past, and because of that, we need BEE or whatever, and they'll frame it that way. They'll say, because of this historical, whites benefited, blacks were victims. Okay, so to be perfectly clear, apartheid did not end up making white people rich. That's not what made people rich. It made capitalism is what made white South Africa rich. So the problem with the system was not that it was capitalistic. The problem with it is that it was exclusionary, right? So you had capitalism for white South Africa, but not for black South Africa. And the way to fix that,
careful,
if you want to,
the ZACP after you if you call the South African economy capitalist during apartheid.
Well, I'm saying it was more capitalist, right? Relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So the way to fix that problem is you expand the capitalism, right? So that it applies to all groups now, so that everybody could get in on the action, and then you can focus on growth. So the problem isn't inequality. The problem is poverty, fundamentally speaking. And by framing it on inequality, you put tension between groups that doesn't have to be there. What you should do is say, we have poor people, let's make them rich. How do we do it? The answer is essentially free market enterprise. So, but by framing it as inequality, you're always going to have inequality. And so it's an issue that's never going to go away. And that gives people like Julius Malema, the perfect opportunity to make hay from now to eternity, because there's always going to be disparities. So, for example, Japanese Americans have significantly more wealth than Puerto Ricans, but the average Japanese American is 40 years old, and the average Puerto Rican is 19 years old. That fact alone is going to lead to massive wealth disparities, right? So, and also in South Africa, if you made everything equal, so you had like the amount of people going in to universities at the same weights, blah, 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 blah. The fact that the white population of South Africa is older on average than the black South African population is going to mean that there's going to be a wealth disparity, because older people have more money. So you see, and then they could come back then and say, oh, but there's still inequality. But maybe it's just because they're older and not because of anything else. If you leveled everything else, you would still have inequality. So it's just... Yeah. This is the
deceit of Marxism. It's all about deceit and lies. It's got nothing to do with equality.
It's all about power.
As the thing. But I mean, look, we understand that egalitarianism and equality of outcome and all that sort of thing is all it's not only impossible, it's against the laws of nature. You know what I mean? It's just impossible, it's just a stupid idea. But the Marxists will then try and deceive people into thinking that it's somehow virtuous. That's why these white people love to virtue signal and actually physically kneel down and wash people's feet and stuff, because they're being deceitful. They're being deceitful. These people are the most racist people you will ever meet, okay? Because they hate black people. They really, absolutely to their core, hate black people. This is... If you just look into the way that they think, they do not want black people to succeed. They do not want black people to be equal to white people. I mean, why do you think they're distancing themselves from black people so much? They do not want black people to be equal to them. Why do you think they're pushing this narrative of whites privileged over here, blacks down here? Why do you think they're pushing that notion? If it was all about white privilege and equality, whites would be saying, yeah, we're equal to you guys. Let's start over. Let's work towards getting this done. You know what I mean? But they're not doing that, you see. I just want a virtue signal.
Right.
Russell,
Now, I guess the last...
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I was going to say is at the end of the day, it's all about power. So if they can do anything in order to get their hands on the levers of power, they'll do it. And this is just one tactic they have.
Precisely. Russell.
Look, in closing quickly, I just want to say that inequality for these guys is the gift that keeps giving. So they're going to constantly find two groups: inequality, the revolution equals the revolution. At every little corner around, at every bend around every corner, they are looking for two groups where there's some sort of inequality, or where they try and tell you that power, it's a matter of disparaging power between the two, and therefore this must be smashed. That is the revolution. So whenever you see two groups and conflict that isn't actually real, it's only presumed, and it's a narrative, and that is for the revolution. And what happens is, if you are participating if you're a white person participating in the white privilege, you are aiding the revolution. If you are a black person participating in Black Lives Matter and protesting, you are assisting in the revolution. You are a useful idiot.
Yes, you are. And let's face it, guys, there's going to be an eternal army of them, because let's face it, equality doesn't exist, and there's always going to be those bumping. There's going to be the haves and the have-nots continually. Precisely. For eternity, always have been, always will be. So let's strengthen ourselves now against these Marxist shitheads, and we know that we can beat them, and we will eventually beat them with God's glory. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, guys. We're going to cut it off there. Tomorrow, that's June the 10th, we're going to be on Willem Petz's show, hopefully dishing out some baseness. We're going to be on his show at 8 o'clock on June the 10th. I don't know, this is coming out tomorrow, which will be June the 10th on that day. So maybe catch us a little bit later on this evening. Thank you so much for listening, guys. Stay reactionary out there as always, because
God wills it.
God wills it.
Well, hello there. If you've made it this far, it means that you really enjoy the reactionary material. Remember to subscribe, share the content, and if you have any questions or any statements or anything that you'd like to let us know, just leave it down in the comments section, and we will definitely 100% respond to your comments or your questions. Thank you again for joining us. Stay reactionary out there. God bless everyone. And remember, God wills it.